Greetings, students, and welcome to the special edition of The Professor Travel Domestic Edition. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you from Orange County, California. This is the website, the vlog, and the podcast that you come to in order to learn more about different travel destinations. This is where you come to discuss them as a community. Hopefully, this will inspire you to travel more and enjoy life more. Now, you can reach me on a variety of different social media platforms, including my website at The Professor Travel. You can also reach me on not only my website at The Professor Travel, but also on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok, all of them at The Professor Travel. If you are an Instagrammer and you like to see pictures, you can see me on there at the_professor_travel. If you're a Twitter then you can find me on there at TheProfessorTR1. And then, of course, if you're a blogger, you can find me on Blogspot at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, I am welcoming back another one of our visiting professors, Shari Weiss Russell. Say hi, everybody, Shari.
Hi.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's been an interesting 6 months, but hanging in there.
Yeah, it's with COVID, it's been crazy, and you work in the health industry, so obviously you see a lot of the ramifications of the different things that are going on right now. So, and
Yeah.
living in New York, where it's been a focal point for a lot of the challenges that have been going on, it can be, I can imagine, a very stressful time for a lot of people in that area.
Yeah, it has been. We've seen a real turnaround, and we got our rates down to 1%, but we're starting to see a slight rise, and so that is cause for concern. But we are getting set up for another surge of the virus.
Okay. Well, good luck to you on that, and I hope that everything goes as safely and as securely as planned. So
Thank
fingers crossed on that. Now, for my students who haven't seen your previous video, can you tell us a little about your credentials, maybe a little bit about your educational background, and then some of the places that you've traveled before?
Sure. So I have a PhD in public health, which I received from Walden University in 2016. I have a master's in public administration from Binghamton University, which is one of the big universities located here in New York State, in Broome County, in 2008. And I have a bachelor's that I got a really long time ago in communication that I won't even say when I got that. And I've been really lucky. I've actually been really well traveled, both because of my career experiences and my personal. But I have had a good fortune. I've traveled to Mexico. I've traveled to the Bahamas. I've traveled to Canada, and I've actually been through 47 of the lower 48 states and 7 Canadian provinces. Yeah, technically, I've traveled to all those places. And I have not made it over to Europe or to Australia, so I haven't made it there. But
we're gonna have to get you out there.
Yeah, I want to, and this is all safer to do so. But I definitely have traveled a lot in my lifetime. And I've done a lot of traveling through the, nationally in many, many, many different states.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, this specific podcast and vlog is going to focus on the state that you're in right now, which is the state of New York. So in order to start this conversation off, talk to me a little bit about what you know about the state of New York in terms of its history.
Well, I used to know a lot more about, I remember like in school, you hear about how it was founded. I mean, it was I believe New York was one of the original colonies, but I do know like my family migrated from Europe, one side of my family from Poland to New York City during World War II. New York has always been a haven for diverse populations. It's been a haven for refugees. New York has a port. New York City has a very large port that was often used for folks who wanted to come into the state. In fact, we are the location. People have often heard of Ellis Island. Ellis Island was used a lot during the I think from the 1920s on through when they finally stopped operations. I think it was in the 50s. And Ellis Island was like the place you would go through when you were emigrating to this country.
Yeah.
And so New York has been sort of the gateway to the U.S. for many, many, many countries. For pretty much, it's been a global point of entry.
Yeah. I was going to say, in fact, my family came over from Russia during the time when the Cossacks came through. That was in the late 1800s. They migrated through through Russia and Poland to Germany, where they left from Germany, and then hit Ellis Island from there. And then from there,
Yep.
they spread out all over the place. So even though Ellis Island was not really heavily in use at that time, I mean, it was starting to in the early 1900s, but it really,
Mhm.
really ramped up in like from 1910 to 1920s, 30s, 40s up to that point.
Yeah, my
Um,
grandfather on my mother's side and my great grandmother actually went through Ellis Island. And then, um, and then going forward, New York has, I think, they call it a melting pot. Like New York City said the melting pot, but the state in general just has a lot of diversity. Really, the thing I think we're most known for now was 9/11. I mean,
yeah.
that really has been the other, like in recent history, that's where folks from other states or other countries would know about New York. And one of the things we're challenged with is when people say New York, they always think New York City, because New
Mhm.
York City is such a vibrant and huge piece of the state, but there's so much more to the state.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the populations in just a second too, because as you may mention, there's a huge amount of area within the state of New York, but a lot of people do focus on Manhattan or New York. Oftentimes they call it New York because it's just it's a small area, but is very condensed. It's very
Right.
populated. So, what are the states, to the best of your knowledge, that border the state of New York?
So Connecticut borders the state of New York. New Jersey borders the state of New York. Pennsylvania borders the state of New York. And I believe those are the main three. I'm trying to think in my actual travels. I believe those are the three states that border New York State. I Oh no, and Ohio. You can get through to Ohio, I believe, as well.
Really? Oh, wow,
Wow.
cool. I
Yep.
did not know. Awesome. And what is the topography of New York? They've got mountains, they've got
It's
shoreline.
it's extremely varied. But we're very mountainous in general. A lot of the Catskill Mountains are very well known. The and We have a lot of mountainous regions, a lot of forests. I mean, we also have a ton of farmland.
Mhm.
Where we have in our rural communities, we have tons of agriculture. Agriculture is a big industry in New York State. And so there's lots of farmland, and then of course there's sort of grasslands, or what do you want to call areas where they have a lot of around the
Like
rivers and
plains.
lakes. Yeah,
Yeah.
plains. But it's a pretty mountainous state, I think.
But no desert.
No desert. Nope, no desert. We are not hospitable to a desert. We're not, and we don't have any of those temperate climates that some
Mm.
states will have, where there are areas that the temperature kind of hovers around a certain range. New York does not have a temperate climate at all. We
No, in
pretty
fact, when
much
I was
have,
there, it's been very humid.
yeah, it's like we have hot summers and freezing cold winters, and not a whole lot in between.
But speaking of the weather, you've had some
Yeah.
really, you see the seasons in New York. You see
Yes.
the leaves
In
change colors and everything.
in fact, right now is one of the most beautiful times of year, because in the autumn, because of the mountains and the way the trees are in the forest, the trees are the leaves are so vibrant, the colors are amazing. And New York State is very popular for people who like to do like leaf watching or see the change of seasons. A lot of folks like to come to New York because you can really see it, like wherever you are, you can really see it. And then we also have like really intense winters just north of me. So I'm in Syracuse, New York, but you go up towards Watertown, they measure their snow in feet, not in inches. I mean,
Gosh.
we get serious, 9-10 feet of snow is not like unusual over a few days. Like 3 feet of snow from a snowfall, they call Old Forge and up that way, Lake George, those areas, they always get feet of snow every time it snows. And
Mm.
it seems to be pretty consistent. But we look at some, because, and then some of our areas we have a lot of lake effect snow, because the topography also, we have the Great Lakes in New York. And because of those Great Lakes and some other lake areas, we get a lot of lake effect snow, which causes much heavier, denser snow. So our weather has been pretty much like long, cold winters, lots of snow. And then our summers have been also really hot. And but we're also a state that has a ton of like hiking, camping. We're really well known for that stuff. And so but the summers are pretty good, but they seem very brief because they really don't kick off until the weather really doesn't kick off until about late May, and then sometimes by September. I mean, this last month, we had temperatures in the 30s.
Mm.
So,
Question
and
for
then
you, actually.
yeah.
Question for you. When I'm thinking about it, I don't think of any major natural disasters that come to mind when I think of New York. Like here in California, we're all about earthquakes. When you get in the Midwest, it's tornado town.
Yeah.
When you're in Florida, you hit hurricanes, but nothing really comes to mind really in terms of like maybe blizzards, I guess.
Yeah, we've had historic blizzards. We have had a hurricane, I think years and years and years ago. Actually, the blizzard of '93. The blizzard of '93 hit New York, and we got like 3.5 feet of snow all at once. That pretty much shut everything down and paralyzed the state.
Mm,
So that was like one of those, record setting types of events that would have been called a natural disaster.
mm.
And we have had some, we've had like earthquakes, mild earthquakes that people have reported. And that's about it. Yeah, we haven't had, and there's even been tornadoes allegedly, but like the big one I remember was the blizzard of '93. That was the last significant weather event that I can think of. And then hurricanes. Oh no, excuse me, Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
Hurricane Sandy impacted New York City and impacted the state of New York. So we were part of the Hurricane Sandy effect area. So
Okay.
that actually would be the last one.
Okay, cool. Well, let's move on to the culture of the area because we talk about diversity and there's a lot of it there. In terms of religion, there's no real predominant religion in the New York area. I mean, you get some, like, there's some random offsets. Like, I think is there like is there even no, I'm thinking maybe more of Pennsylvania has like a little bit of an Amish
Well,
thing.
we do actually. We have Amish and Mennonites in New York.
Okay.
We actually have a large Amish and Mennonite community in the rural parts of New York. Very large,
Okay.
actually. They're pretty significant. I know we are Pennsylvania Dutch, but there are a ton of there are large pockets of Amish and Mennonite communities within the rural New York areas, but not anywhere near the cities. You wouldn't see them in the city.
And then towards the cities, that's when you get into a little bit more of the Christianity, Jewish.
Christian, Judaism, Muslim,
Mhm,
Sikh. I mean, you'll see all the different faiths, Buddhism, paganism.
mhm.
Yeah, very diverse. Like one of the things about New York is there's a vast representation of faiths and spiritual paths, I would say. But we have the dominant, three dominant religions that you see, but we have an awful lot of all the other representation from all the other religions.
Okay. And as far as art goes, I mean, New York is known for its
Yeah,
incredible museums, including the MoMA and the
yeah.
Museum of History that's in New York City. But again, I'm focusing on New York City. But how is the art community as a whole throughout?
I I think like there's a really large appreciation for art throughout the state. Um, Folk art is very popular in the rural areas.
Okay.
So you will see and when you think of art, I think when people think of paintings and such, well, also think of crafts. I will say we have very large craft communities in the state of New York. There's a big fiber arts guild that is very big near me and in the southern tier. And I think those fiber arts guilds are throughout the state. So fiber arts is very popular. Woodworking is extremely popular and is an art that's um, big in this state. Because I think some art develops from what the natural resources are that you have access to,
Sure.
and we have a lot of folks can access wood and glass blowing. Corning is one of the cities that has a very famous glass museum, the Glass Museum, pretty
Hmm.
much. I don't know other states as well, but that's a big attraction here. They do a lot of wonderful glass blowing. You can actually learn glass blowing. So that's kind of cool. So there's a lot of appreciation for that. And we have a lot of street art. When you want to think about art in that concept, people might call it graffiti, but I've seen some pretty impressive demonstrations of street artists and street art on buildings and on walls and places. So, I think we have a super eclectic collection of art and appreciation for it, and we see it in the smaller cities. Not as, New York City is probably the largest city. And then we have Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, which is the capital of New York, and other cities. Other cities, they all have representation of all those different arts.
Excellent. Now I know language, just like religion, is varied depending upon where you're at in the state, but the majority of people do speak English in the state of New York, I would say.
English, yep, and Spanish is also pretty prevalent in a lot. In fact, so for example, the work that I do, a lot of stuff we have in English and in Spanish. Pretty much any healthcare provider you go to, you're going to see things in English and Spanish, and then offerings of other in languages through interpreters. I think New York also has a very large Asian population. By Asian, I also mean Asian Indian and Asian Chinese.
Okay.
So there are people who speak Mandarin is another popular language, but again, that's more in the business sector, in the bigger cities. But I would honestly tell you, I think English and Spanish are our two biggest languages, and Spanish is up there with English.
I do have a question, because you're not I don't think New York is that far from Quebec.
Correct.
Geographically speaking, but would you say you get a good French grouping that comes in? Okay.
Not at all. No, that's interestingly enough, we really don't.
Interesting. Okay. Now we get into talking about my favorite subject, which is food. Some of the best restaurants and some of the most unique food options are available in the state of New York. I will say, like, the ones that obviously come to mind: New York cheesecake, New York pizza, bagels, crazy, all kinds of New York deli food specifically. There's just so much of it that's just really. Am I leaving anything out? Is there anything that really comes to mind and says New York? Please.
You can't forget the buffalo wing, the chicken wing. The buffalo wing was born in Buffalo.
Yeah.
The Anchor Bar in Buffalo, and it was actually something that was thrown together because there was a visiting. I don't know if it was a religious leader or a governor or something was coming to visit. They didn't have very many ingredients left. They just weren't prepared for the visit. And so the chef just had these wings, which normally were just kind of cast off. They fried them up, put together the buffalo wing sauce, and served them, and they were a huge hit. And that was how the buffalo chicken wing was born. So buffalo wings, the other thing. And so in New York, what's interesting is there are, I think, cultural foods by region. So like in New York City, you'll have the deli, the pizza, the bagels, and then come to Southern Tier and you're going to hear something called the chicken speedy. That is a marinated chicken. It's delicious.
It's fantastic.
Nobody outside of the Southern Tier knows what the heck you're talking about.
I didn't know about that until I came to a few years ago to see you, and I was like, what's this? It's so amazing. So
yes, exactly. So it's kind of like, even though they try to market it a little bit, it's a very unique marinated chicken, and you only get that type of sauce from folks in the Southern Tier. And so I think there's, and then there's other foods. Apples are very big in certain regions of New York. And so it's like every area has its own food. Like I said, the Anchor Bar has the buffalo wing, which that's where that was born, the chicken wing. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
I was going to say, like, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, and I know I'm getting back to New York City again, but like the Coney Island dog,
the Coney, and the Knish. Knish.
How could you not? Yeah, exactly. Right. So just amazing food there. And, surprisingly, at least in the city of Manhattan, or Manhattan, the island, there's a lot of not just restaurants but street food. Like a lot of places to get stuff on the street.
I was just going to talk about street food and food trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Food trucks are huge in all of the cities, in all of the areas, because they bring really incredible gourmet and cultural food options to any community. I mean, the food truck was brilliant because suddenly people realized that they could bring their favorite food or their specialty to any community anywhere by just putting it on a truck.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain fish fries that are real popular here called Doug's Fish Fry. That's very famous. Well, now they have things that they're doing. They have events where they take food trucks that go all over the state. So it's really cool.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Now, are you familiar? I'm told that New York has a couple of sports teams.
I'm somewhat familiar. I mean, I know about the Jets, the Giants, the Yankees, the Mets,
Hmm.
and the Islanders. That's the
Yeah.
hockey team. I'm a diehard Yankee fan and have been since I was a child.
Mm.
So that's kind of my team. And that's pretty much it. But I do know that we have, nationally ranked sports teams. We also have some very good local teams in the different cities. They have some, what is it, A ball or B ball,
Yeah.
the classic, like right below semi-professional sports. We have a lot of that. We have some racetracks in oh gosh, now I can't remember the name, but in just outside of Ithaca,
Hmm.
outside of Tompkins County, is a big famous racetrack up a little ways up. And it's I just can't
Tioga,
think of.
Tioga Downs.
Nope, Tiger Downs is horse racing, which we're
Oh,
also well known for. We're well known for really good horse racing in the Catskills. That was very famous. But there is a big NASCAR track in. Um, I'm sorry, I can't remember the
no,
name.
that's okay. That's okay. We got a lot to cover.
So,
I get it.
yeah,
But I don't think there's any state holidays in New York that come to
no,
mind. That's
no,
fine.
there's no New York representative holidays.
No problem. So in terms of the population, I looked it up just a little bit ago. It's 19.795
Million.
million people
Yep,
that are in the area, and 8 million of those are right in the city, in the island of
yep,
Manhattan, as you can see from just the picture there. It
very
just seems
dense.
like they're all over the place. But I mean, again, I think the red spots that we're seeing or the orange spots that we're seeing are pretty much going to
Or the
be things like
cities,
Syracuse, yeah, Syracuse, Ithaca,
Albany,
Albany,
Rochester, Watertown.
exactly.
Yeah, yep. And
Now,
then the rest of it is very rural. There's a lot of farms. It's in the very, very rural communities.
excellent. Now, in terms of the number of there's a huge number of businesses that hire within the state of New York, but the big ones that come to mind are Deloitte, J.P. Morgan, a lot of the
Yep,
banking stuff, Citibank, Price Waterhouse Cooper. Those are huge. But then you also have like Verizon and Pfizer, and you had another one that you were mentioning earlier,
Spectrum is a very big
Spectrum.
employer here. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, again, New York produces just a ton of capital. Just amazing levels of a huge business that they do there. But a lot of the business organizations actually have their headquarters in New York. While they don't
Yes,
do
they do.
necessarily a ton of hiring, their headquarters, however, are based in New York because
The
it's like the
business
center
center,
of the world.
capital business. Yep, that's where they're headquartered. Yep.
Now, you've been out on the road traveling for many years in terms of
Hmm.
you did some long haul trucking for a while and
Yep,
stuff like that. So you're familiar with the highways and byways of the New York area, correct?
I am. Oh, yes, very
How do
much
you
so.
how do you rate the infrastructure of New York compared to other states?
Okay, so the highways themselves are pretty good. We have actually a pretty vast highway system. You can get to almost anywhere using a road system. We have a tollway. Our local roads, local infrastructure leave a lot to be desired, and I think it's because the harsh weather makes
Yeah.
it difficult to maintain them. So yeah, the highways though, I mean, really well thought out, well planned. We all joke about, sometimes in the summertime it's hard because there's a lot of cones up there. They always seem to be paving or fixing or doing something. So there's always a ton of road work happening in
Yeah.
the summertime, and that's a source of frustration. But you can get anywhere, to anywhere, from anywhere very easily in the state.
Yeah, because I think one of the things that shines really well with New York that does not do very well here on the West Coast is like whether it's subways or light rails or buses or
Right.
trains. The train system on the East Coast is fantastic uh, uh,
Yes,
in terms in,
but
in terms of being able to get from one place to the other. I mean, not
right. And
necessarily
like
always run on time, but
right. And so like New York City has an incredible subway system. Some of the other cities, I think Albany does too, like large urban metropolitan centers have their own subways, have really good bus systems, have, and then have your basic cabs and all the other stuff that people use, and then of course we all have the really lots of major airports.
mhm,
But in the rural communities, they're very challenged. The bus systems are not so great because they have so much geography to cover and they don't have enough funding.
mm,
So they're often challenged, especially the rural communities. There are no train. There are trains like Greyhound, those major commercial trains that you can take, from, point A to point B, but they're not, it's not always easy. You can maybe go to Syracuse to Albany or Rochester, but you can't get to every town all the time. So only major destinations are available by train across the state. And and like I said, and then the buses, you can do those buses as well. It's not a great way to travel. It's not super comfortable, but it is an option.
Okay. And then in terms of taking Manhattan out of the equation,
Yeah.
what are the big tourism spots that one might go to within the state? Why would someone want to visit other places within New York apart
Oh,
from
well,
Manhattan?
we have lots of tourism in the Catskill Mountains and Lake George area because it's beautiful country. It's there's camping and hiking and boating. Certainly Ithaca is very popular for many reasons, not just for the school, but just for like all the there's a lot of Cuba Lake. Like the lakes are very popular
Mm,
for people who enjoy outdoors. So we have a lot of great outdoor stuff, especially in the summer. Hiking. We also, pre-COVID, have a ton of festivals and fairs that are very well known. The Renaissance Festival, the New York
mhm.
State Fair, right? These things are really well known, and people travel all over to attend them. And then there's different people like to visit places because of like the arts.
Mhm.
So they'll come to Corning for the glass blowers and the glass museums. They'll come to other places. I'm trying to name off the top of my head. I don't have really all of them, but I think that draws a lot of tourism. There's also, because of the food, like we talked about, there's the uh, what do they call that when it's the food
Like
tourism?
for
I know.
tourists, yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like gastro tourism. People will travel to taste the foods of different locations. We have a lot of different museums throughout the different across the state that people visit, and New
Oh,
York is a really just a great state to visit. There is so much to see.
and a lot of
Farmers markets.
and a lot of historical places too throughout the
Yes.
state.
Okay. Auburn, for example, Harriet Tubman. She is the head of the Underground Railroad. There's a
Mhm.
ton of his national history here. So people will come to Cayuga County. Also, our Finger Lakes are well known for wine. We make
Mm.
incredible wine in the Finger Lakes. A lot of people travel for that, to check out breweries and wineries. But there's a lot of history here. There's the Harriet Tubman. There's in Elmira, I believe, Rod Serling and
Mm. Twilight Zone
Oz,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
And then um, Charles L. Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz.
Mm. Fantastic. Now, for the most part, I think your government is pretty much state and federal are pretty much democratic, correct?
Yes, we're pretty much what you would call blue state, and our governor currently is also a Democrat.
Okay. All right. And it's pretty much that same, both state and local as well, would you say, for the
Yeah,
most
yeah.
part?
State. Well, no, locally, I'll tell you, no. Locally, it's mixed.
Okay.
Locally, there's some Republican, but I'd call it a mix. But
Okay.
overall, we would be called a blue state.
Okay. Now, in terms of the resources, what do people just, when they think of New York, I mean, obviously they think of the New York
Oh,
Stock Exchange, they think
yep.
of the skyline of New York City. What are other things that they just, like, what are the
So
biggest resources, would you say, out of New York?
corn. We have huge corn and soy industries here. We have maple syrup, which is very popular and very famous. We also have, I'm just trying to think, honey is
Mm,
another industry when I think about like different resources. And river rock, things like that, like stone, things like that. We have quarries that are resources that are used. I'm trying to think I think we even have a salt mine somewhere in one of the areas. I could
very
be
good.
wrong. Somebody can call me on that
That's
because
okay.
I can't quite remember. I might be confusing it with Pennsylvania, but
Could be
yeah,
right on the border,
so
because
we
I
have
know
a
you were
lot.
there.
Yeah, yeah, we have a lot. I mean, just so many great and timber, logging,
Mm,
like timber. We have a lot of good timber and wood. That's another big resource.
excellent. And of course, the education system in New York is second to none. You guys have more colleges than I think almost anybody I'm aware of, including both the CUNY and the SUNY systems.
Yes.
And you have New
And
York.
also Syracuse, like you have mentioned, NYU,
Mhm.
Cornell University,
Oh,
Ithaca
yeah.
College. Um, yeah, we have a tremendous educational system here in terms of universities. Lots of universities, lots of educational opportunities. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we we're talking about businesses. Lockheed Martin has a huge um, uh,
Presence
representation
there.
here, and they also train a lot of their folks here. Like, and Binghamton University, yeah, lots of universities. Yeah, it's really impressive.
And then the specialty design schools like Parsons in New York City, obviously,
Yes,
they have a lot of fashion designs because it's like one of the biggest fashion hubs in the world as well.
yes.
So very, very good. Now, kind of ending this, we talk a
Hmm.
little bit about safety and security, and of course, you may mention at the beginning one of the biggest things that New York is unfortunately known for is 9/11. And
Yeah.
so, were you in New York when that occurred?
I was, yeah, I was not in the city. I was actually in Ithaca at the time, but
Okay.
yes, I was in New York, and I remember very vividly seeing the planes and thinking, "Holy cow, what's going on?" And then everything thereafter. And I would say to you that post 9/11, the whole world is different. New York is certainly different. I think New York, the city has different, there's a lot of new security, like getting in and out of the Manhattan Island, the main city. There are tunnels. That's the only way to get into the city. You have to travel through tunnels if you're driving a car. And there's a lot of security now, and you can't, people are watched. It's very intense. Um, and then the rest of, like, all the other urban and rural areas, I would say, I don't think our crime, I want to say I don't think our crime levels are higher than average, but I do know that, for example, there's been some issues with, every once in a while we have like a bizarre outlier. Something happens, everyone goes, oh my gosh, there's a lot of shootings. Like, we had a recent terrible shooting in Rochester. And so that's spiking their crime rate. But in general, I think New York is very safe. I think the city is safe. I have no problem walking around New York City at night by myself. Does not scare me. It's a beautiful, wonderful city. The people are, it's wonderful and interesting and eclectic. And I think anywhere you go in New York, I think you'd be safe. And I don't think there are any more, like any kind of terrorist threat that's any higher than many areas. But I'm sure because we have a port and because we have major airports and because, that kind of thing, I think it means that we have some higher risk of terrorism than other states just in general. And so that's why the security, I believe, is higher in those areas.
But I mean, the good news about that is both the NYPD, all of the entire state, the police force and sheriff's forces in New York, as well as the fire departments, are renowned and
Yeah, the first responders are tremendous. I can tell you, not just from New York City, but from any city. First responders in New York are really top notch, really top notch.
excellent. Well, I do want to thank you so very much for taking the time to chat with us a little bit about New York. I think it's been really insightful, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been my pleasure. And
Awesome.
I hope folks learn something, and I hope people make the choice to come visit us here in New York because it's a really cool state to visit.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, for my students that are out there, if you have any questions about New York or anything in general about The Professor Travel, you can send them to me at scott@theprofessortravel.com. If you're watching this on YouTube and you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, hit the bell icon right above the screen here. If you haven't already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, and then you'll be given new content when that comes out. In fact, if you like this content and you'd like to see more of it, give us a like. But if you're listening to us on the podcast, by all means, please feel free to rate us. We always appreciate that. And until our next time, take care and make every day a travel adventure. Bye, everybody.